Have you ever felt someone pull you close, only to push you away the moment you start to feel safe? One day they are warm, present, almost magnetic. The next day they are distant, quiet, unreachable. And you are left standing there, replaying every word, every message, every small moment, asking yourself what changed. That question alone can steal your sleep. It can sit in your chest like a weight. It can make a strong mind start to doubt itself. Because the most confusing pain is not rejection. The most confusing pain is mixed signals. The human brain hates uncertainty. It looks for patterns. It looks for meaning. When something feels good and then suddenly disappears, your mind does not relax. It tightens. It searches. It starts to chase clarity like it is oxygen. This is not weakness. This is how the nervous system is built. We are wired to move toward what feels safe and familiar. And when safety is given and taken away, your brain does something dangerous. It starts to crave the very thing that hurts it. That is why these connections feel so intense. Not because they are healthy, but because they are unpredictable. The same way a slot machine keeps people pulling the lever, uncertainty keeps your heart hoping. You remember the good moments. You remember the warmth. You remember how it felt when they were close. And you tell yourself, if I just do one more thing right, maybe it will go back to that. This is how emotional attachment quietly turns into emotional chasing. But here is the truth most people never say out loud. Some people do not pull away because they do not care. They pull away because they care, and it scares them. Closeness feels like danger to them. Intimacy feels like losing control. So they protect themselves the only way they know how. They create distance. They create confusion. They create space that keeps you near, but never fully in. And without realizing it, you start playing a game you never agreed to play. The hardest part is this. When someone is avoidant and obsessed at the same time, their behavior does not look like love. It looks like contradiction. It looks like silence after deep talks. It looks like promises followed by absence. It looks like just enough attention to keep you hoping, and just enough distance to keep you unsure. And your mind, which only wants peace, keeps trying to solve a puzzle that was never meant to be solved. If you have ever felt stuck in this loop, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not weak. You are not naive. You are human. Your brain is responding to emotional unpredictability. Your heart is responding to moments of connection. And your nervous system is trying to protect you from loss, while also chasing relief. This is not a personal failure. This is psychology. But here is where your power begins. The moment you stop asking, why are they doing this? And start asking, why am I staying in this? Everything changes, because clarity does not come from understanding their behavior. It comes from understanding your own patterns, your own boundaries, your own worth. In this video, you are going to learn the hidden games that avoidant people often play when they are emotionally hooked, but afraid to commit. More importantly, you are going to learn how to stop being pulled by those patterns and start standing in your own strength. Not by chasing, not by proving, not by waiting, but by thinking differently, acting differently, and choosing yourself first. And if you stay until the end, you will walk away with a mindset shift that can change not just one relationship, but the way you allow people to treat you for the rest of your life. Because the real win is not outsmarting someone else. The real win is freeing your mind from the game entirely. When you look back at moments like this, it is easy to think the other person is playing with you on purpose. It feels personal. It feels targeted. It feels like someone is choosing to confuse you. But most of the time, what you are seeing is not strategy. It is fear wearing a mask. Some people do not know how to stay when things start to matter. They know how to connect. They know how to charm. They know how to create sparks. But when closeness begins to feel real, Something inside them tightens. Their chest feels heavy, their thoughts get loud, and instead of leaning in, they step back. This is where many hearts get trapped. Because on the surface, the behavior looks cold. It looks careless. It looks like indifference. But underneath, it is often a nervous system that learned, a long time ago, that closeness equals danger. Maybe closeness once meant pain. Maybe it meant loss. Maybe it meant feeling powerless. So the body remembers. Even when the mind wants love, the body wants safety. And to that body, distance feels safer than connection. Here's the part most people miss. Avoidant behavior is not about not feeling enough. It is often about feeling too much. When emotions rise, their system does not say stay. It says run. Not because you are wrong, not because you are unworthy, but because their internal alarm goes off when intimacy gets close. And that alarm is loud. So what happens? They give you just enough to keep the bond alive. Then they pull away to calm their fear. Then they come back when the distance feels empty. Then they pull away again when closeness feels heavy. To you, this feels like a roller coaster. To them, it feels like survival. And the tragic part is that both people end up tired, confused, and emotionally drained. Your brain, however, does not see it as survival. Your brain sees it as a pattern to solve. It starts connecting dots. It starts creating stories. It starts believing that if you say the right thing, act the right way, or become a little more patient, the distance will stop. This is how hope turns into effort. And effort turns into self-betrayal, because slowly, without noticing, you begin to shrink your needs. You begin to lower your standards. You begin to accept less than what your heart actually wants. Not because you want less, but because you want them. And the mind will always try to protect what it is attached to, even if that protection comes at the cost of your peace. There is a quiet shift that happens in moments like this. You stop asking, "Is this good for me?" and start asking, "How do I keep this from ending?" That is not love talking. That is fear talking. That is the nervous system trying to avoid loss, even if staying means staying in uncertainty. This is why these connections feel so strong, not because they are stable, but because they are emotionally activating. Highs feel high, lows feel low, and your brain starts to confuse intensity with importance. It starts to believe that if something feels this powerful, it must mean something deep. But intensity is not the same as safety, and chemistry is not the same as consistency. Real connection does not make you feel like you are walking on emotional glass. Real connection does not make you rehearse messages in your head. Real connection does not make you question your worth in silence. Real connection feels calm. It feels steady. It feels clear. If what you are feeling is mostly anxiety, mostly confusion, mostly waiting, then your body is already telling you something your mind is trying to ignore. And here is a hard truth that can set you free. You cannot heal someone by enduring their distance. You cannot prove your value by staying quiet about your needs. You cannot earn consistency by accepting inconsistency. The more you adapt to emotional uncertainty, the more your nervous system learns that this is normal. And what feels normal starts to feel acceptable, even when it hurts. This is not about blaming anyone. This is about understanding the pattern so you can step out of it. Because once you see what is really happening, you stop taking it so personally. You stop turning their fear into your responsibility. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's ability to stay. And something powerful happens when that shift begins. You stop chasing clarity from someone who is scared of it. You stop waiting for stability from someone who does not know how to hold it. You start turning your attention back to yourself, to your standards, to your emotional health, to the kind of connection that does not require you to lose yourself to keep it. This is where strength is born, not in forcing someone to choose you, but in choosing yourself even when it is hard, even when you still care, even when part of you hopes they will change. Because self-respect is not loud, it is quiet. It is the moment you decide that peace is more important than potential. And once you understand this, you start seeing the patterns more clearly. You stop calling them mysteries. You start seeing them as signals. Signals that are not there to confuse you, but to guide you back to your own center, back to your own worth, back to the truth that love should not feel like a test you are always afraid to fail. Once you start seeing the pattern, something inside you begins to wake up. You realize that what felt personal was often protective, what felt like rejection was often fear, and what felt like a game was often a nervous system trying to survive. This does not make the pain smaller, but it makes the story clearer. Because clarity is not about excusing behavior. It is about freeing your mind from carrying a weight that was never yours to hold. Many people believe that if someone truly cares, they will stay close. They will lean in. They will choose consistency. That is how a healthy nervous system works. But not every nervous system learned safety through closeness. Some learned safety through distance. Some learned that being too close meant getting hurt, losing control, or being left. So even when they want connection, their body reacts as if connection is a threat. This creates a strange and painful contradiction. The heart moves forward. The body pulls back. The mind wants you. The nervous system wants space. And when those two forces collide, behavior becomes confusing. One moment feels warm. The next feels cold. One moment feels open. The next feels closed. To you, it feels like mixed signals. To them, it feels like trying to breathe. Your mind tries to make sense of this. It looks for logic. It looks for reasons. It looks for something you can fix. Maybe if you are more patient. Maybe if you are less demanding. Maybe if you are more understanding. And slowly, without realizing it, you start shaping yourself around their fear. You start editing your needs. You start quieting your truth. You start becoming smaller so they can feel safer. But here is the cost. Every time you silence yourself to keep someone close, you teach your nervous system that love requires self-abandonment. Every time you accept distance that hurts you, you teach your heart that pain is part of connection. And what you repeat, you normalize. What you normalize, you begin to tolerate, even when it drains you. The hardest part is that there are real moments of closeness, real laughter, real depth, real sparks. Those moments are not fake. They are not imagined. They are real. And that is what makes letting go so hard. Your mind holds on to those memories and says, "See, it can be good." And your heart keeps waiting for that version to come back and stay. But a relationship is not built on moments. It is built on patterns. And if the pattern is approach and retreat, warmth and distance, closeness and silence, then the pattern is the message, not the words, not the promises, not the potential, the pattern. Your nervous system feels this before your mind accepts it. That is why you feel anxious. That is why you feel on edge. That is why you keep checking your phone. That is why you keep replaying conversations. Your body is trying to protect you from uncertainty. It is saying, this does not feel stable. Even if your heart wants to believe it will become stable. This is not about judging the other person. It is about being honest with yourself. You are not here to be someone's emotional waiting room. You are not here to be someone's almost. You are not here to hold space for a connection that only shows up when it feels convenient. Real love does not make you question your value. Real love does not make you compete with silence. Real love does not make you feel like you have to earn basic consistency. Love is not perfect, but it is clear. It is not loud, but it is steady. It does not keep you guessing. It does not keep you shrinking. There is a quiet fear that keeps many people stuck in these dynamics. The fear that if you stop trying, it will end. The fear that if you speak up, you will lose them. The fear that if you choose yourself, you will be alone. But staying in something that slowly empties you is not safety. It is just a slower kind of loss. You do not need to become colder to protect yourself. You do not need to become distant to be strong. You do not need to play games to win peace. Strength is not in pulling away. Strength is in standing still and telling the truth about what you need. When you stop chasing emotional availability, you create space for real availability to find you. When you stop negotiating your worth, you remind your nervous system what respect feels like. When you stop confusing intensity with connection, you open the door to something calmer, something healthier, something that does not require you to live in your head. This is not about giving up on people. It is about giving up on patterns that keep you anxious, small, and unsure. It is about choosing relationships that feel like rest, not like work you are afraid to fail. It is about remembering that you are allowed to want consistency, clarity, and emotional safety without apologizing for it. And once you truly understand this, the behavior you once took personally starts to look different. You see the distance, you see the push and pull, you see the fear behind it, but you also see your own power more clearly, the power to step out of confusion, the power to stop chasing, the power to choose a life that does not revolve around someone else's emotional limits. When you understand that distance can come from fear, not lack of feeling, another layer of the story starts to reveal itself. You begin to notice that the quiet moments are not random. The pauses are not accidents. The gaps are not just busy days. Silence becomes a tool, not always a planned one, not always a conscious one, but a powerful one. Because silence does something words cannot. It creates space for your mind to fill in the blanks, and the human mind is very good at filling blanks with hope, worry, and imagination. When someone goes quiet right after closeness, your nervous system reacts. It scans for danger. It looks for what changed. It tries to fix what it cannot see. You start replaying conversations. You start reading old messages. You start checking your phone more often, not because you are weak, but because uncertainty activates the part of the brain that looks for relief. And relief, in that moment, feels like a reply. This is why silence can feel so heavy. It is not just the absence of sound. It is the absence of certainty. And the brain does not like that. The brain would rather have bad news than no news. At least, bad news is clear. Silence leaves you suspended between hope and fear. And that space is exhausting. For someone who is avoidant, silence can feel calming. It lowers emotional pressure. It gives their nervous system room to breathe. It helps them regain a sense of control. For you, silence often does the opposite. It raises questions. It raises anxiety. It raises doubt. Two people can experience the same distance in completely different ways. One feels relief, the other feels loss. This is where the dynamic becomes unbalanced. The person who is more comfortable with distance holds more emotional power, without even trying to. Not because they are stronger, but because they need less reassurance in that moment. And the person who needs clarity starts to wait. And the person who waits starts to shrink their life around that waiting. The mind tries to protect you here. It tells you stories. Maybe they are busy. Maybe they are tired. Maybe they need space. And sometimes those stories are true. But when silence becomes a pattern, not a moment, it stops being neutral. It becomes a signal that communication is being used as a way to manage closeness rather than build it. The painful part is that silence can feel like punishment, even when it is not meant to be. Your body feels the drop in connection, like a drop in safety. Your chest feels tight. Your thoughts get loud. You start wondering what you did wrong. You start measuring your worth by the speed of a reply. That is how silence slowly turns into self-doubt. And here is the trap. When the silence finally breaks, when the message finally comes, when the warmth returns, your nervous system feels relief, not just happiness. Relief. And the brain remembers that. It links relief to their return. So the cycle continues. Distance creates anxiety. Their return creates calm. And your system starts to associate them with emotional regulation, even though they are also the source of the stress. This is not love. This is conditioning. It is the same way the brain learns patterns of reward and withdrawal. It is not about intention. It is about impact. And the impact is that you start waiting for someone else to settle your nervous system instead of learning to settle it yourself. There is another quiet cost. You begin to hesitate before you speak. You start thinking, if I say this, will they disappear again? You start choosing silence over honesty. You start choosing peace in the moment over truth in the long run. And slowly, the relationship becomes less about connection and more about managing reactions. This is where many people lose themselves without realizing it, not in one big decision, but in 100 small ones. A message not sent, a feeling not shared, a need not spoken, a boundary not set. And each time, you tell yourself it is just being patient. But patience that requires you to disappear is not patience. It is self-erasure. It is important to say this clearly. You are not asking for too much when you want communication. You are not being needy when you want consistency. You are not being dramatic when silence hurts. You are responding like a human being who is wired for connection. Silence can be kind when it is used to rest. It can be healthy when it is used to think. But when it is used to avoid, to control, or to manage closeness without honesty, it stops being neutral. It becomes a wall. And walls do not build relationships. They just keep people guessing on opposite sides. You do not need to chase someone who goes quiet to prove your worth. You do not need to earn basic communication. You do not need to stay in a dynamic where your nervous system is always on edge, waiting for the next sign of life. Calm is not boring. Calm is safe. Calm is what your body has been asking for all along. When you stop treating silence like a mystery to solve and start treating it like information, everything shifts. You stop chasing echoes. You start listening to patterns. You stop asking, what did I do wrong? And start asking, is this the kind of connection I want to live inside? Because real connection does not hide in silence. It speaks. It shows up. It reassures. It does not leave you alone with your doubts, and you deserve a connection that does not require you to guess where you stand. The real game. Behind their silence, not leave you alone with your doubts, and you deserve a connection that does not require you to guess where you stand. The real game behind their silence. Because real connection does not hide in silence. It speaks. It shows up. It reassures. It does not leave you alone with your doubts, and you deserve a connection that does not require you to guess where you stand. The real game behind their silence.